When somebody asks you to describe what cosmic horror is, chances are you'd have a hard time explaining what it is. I mean, that's kind of the point. A lot of us might think of body horror, tentacled monsters, not that kind, cults, and forbidden knowledge. And while a lot of good cosmic horror stories do have those, that's not entirely what cosmic horror is about. It's an itch inside your head, and it's one that you can't quite reach. A lot of it only scratches the surface. But every so often, a story comes out that just gets it all, that does it the way it should be done. A story that portrays the physical manifestations of cosmic horror, the chaos it imposes on you, as well as the metaphysical mysteries that it entails. The movie Annihilation, now a cult classic, is one of these stories. In less than 2 hours, it managed to explore what makes cosmic horror. In fact, it does it so well that each element of cosmic horror that it portrays can be a movie all on its own. I think the best way to explore this is to take the cosmic horror conventions Annihilation uses, dive deeper, and maybe even share some other movies who made it their core theme. A lot of them reoccur in other stories. One of these themes needs to give our stories stakes and consequences. After all, something has to happen when our characters fail or make a mistake. What better way to show this than physical violence? You see, pain is a universal language. It doesn't need any kind of translation. And that's why it's so typical in any kind of horror story. The body counts, the gore, there's a place for all of that in cosmic horror. In Annihilation, the beginning of their journey focuses on that element. First, they're attacked by an alligator with just a hint of wrongness to it, followed by a bear that doesn't quite sound the way it should. The alligator itself isn't the kind that you'd run into outside the Shimmer, and they see a bear's face that has its innards turned inside out, only held into place by its skull. Both have mutations that are highly improbable and mostly impossible. A good example of this is when the bear attacks a second time, and it actually calls out to them. What's worse is that it calls out to them with the voice of somebody they once knew. Again, these attacks added stakes to the story. It showed what the Shimmer could do if you weren't careful. These were moments used to show the pure chaos cosmic horror introduced into things as we understand them. It was there to show everything that was happening inside the Shimmer. But just before they encounter the bear a second time, we are given a glimpse of one of the most iconic elements of the genre: body horror. You see, as humans, we can't help but to anthropomorphize everything we see or even think of. We just have to put that human element into everything. I mean, look at Barney. People made him into a talking purple dinosaur with hands and legs. Body horror magnifies this by turning the very thing that makes us and twists it. It takes our humanity and warps it into something we can't understand anymore. I mean, what better way to show how we've crossed the boundaries of the human mind than to actually destroy our perception of how things are supposed to be? In Annihilation, they don't notice it right away, but the moment they stepped into the boundary of the Shimmer, it started something. More and more, they notice the subtle changes in their bodies, changes that break them in ways outside of human consideration and comprehension. Remember that bear's voice? It actually got that voice by having one of their fallen comrades being absorbed into it, by being refracted into it. This is further emphasized when they come across a video of the previous team actually opening up the body of one of their members while they were still alive, as his innards slithered inside of him. Now, it's unclear whether it was something alien or it was the person becoming alien. Once they find their way into the room where the video was filmed, that very same person was now growing into the walls, an amalgamation of both flora and fauna. While on the subject of being transformed, being refracted, and becoming an amalgam of sorts, a recent movie took that very concept and turned it into a wild horror ride with cosmic undertones. The movie Together takes a couple that stumbles into an otherworldly spring during a hike. Much like entering the Shimmer, once a couple drank from this spring, their bodies began to change. It was as if every fiber of their being was being drawn into each other. Their muscles acted like magnets, drawing them closer and closer. Their innermost thoughts became less and less their own, and even every strand of hair in their bodies yearned to become entwined with the other. What's worse is if they merge the wrong way, they become this inhuman blob of skin, bones, and agony. Do you know the worst thing about having your world shattered by something incomprehensible? It doesn't even care, just like you. An element of anthropomorphism is projecting the same kind of concern that we have for ourselves to others. I mean, when something bad happens to us, we ask the universe what we did wrong to even deserve these things. We listen to the news, we empathize with people, we practice compassion. Sometimes, I guess. All this is part of being human. We have this habit of projecting our human tendencies to non-human things. But when we go beyond human comprehension, can we still say the same? Will an eldritch being have the same level of empathy or compassion, or even the notion of right and wrong as we do? Or is it all beneath them? Again, the shimmer is a good example. They begin changing because of the strange nature of the object that crashed into the lighthouse. Science can't explain it, but there's this sense of an otherworldly presence trying to impose its will onto the environment. When you look at it, it seems like it's just a place that you can go to. But later into the movie, we see that it's connected to an eldritch being at the center of it all. The flora and the fauna all have their roots reaching deep into the cosmic being at the center. It's somewhat confirmed when Lena burns a being with a grenade, and the shimmer burns along with it. However, the real sense of indifference we get from this being is when Ventress merges with it. Right before she bursts into light, transforming into something we don't really understand, she says this: "It's not like us. It's unlike us. I don't know what it wants, but it'll grow until it encompasses everything. Our bodies and our minds will be fragmented into their smallest parts until not one part remains." Annihilation. Everything happening there wasn't because it had bad intentions. It was just doing its own thing. I'd like to think that this is also the case in the movie A Color Out of Space. Based on the short story written by the father of cosmic or Lovecraftian horror, H.P. Lovecraft, this is one of the best movies illustrating the indifference of an element or being we don't really understand. It follows the Gardner family as they move into a farm to raise alpacas, the animal of the future, trying to get a new start after the matriarch of the family recovers from cancer. The move shakes the whole family up, and there's obvious tension in the air. But this all goes even further when a meteorite with a color out of space crashes into their backyard. Much like the shimmer, it begins to mutate, twist, and somewhat corrupt its surroundings. The worst thing about this is that it is also growing and influencing everything it touches. I mean, it's just a color, but at the same time, we are given hints that it has a will of its own. Ward, a character in the story, I believe, says it best. What touched this place cannot be quantified or understood by human science. It was just a color out of space, a messenger from realms whose existence stuns the brain and numbs us with the gulfs that it throws open before our frenzied eyes. Both descriptions of the otherworldly or even eldritch beings that have entered our minuscule part of the universe suggest something bigger, something that our human minds can't even begin to understand. Much like how we build our homes over anthills, these eldritch beings might not even know that we're there, nor would they even care. But that just brings us to just how vast the wider universe is, or if there are any others. When you look up at the night sky and see all the stars that surround us, you just get this feeling of how small you really are. To me, that feeling is one of the driving forces that makes cosmic horror so compelling. But how do you illustrate or show that feeling to people still stuck in this plane of existence, or basically just down here on Earth? I mean, most of these stories revolve around bringing the cosmic magnitude of the universe right to your doorstep. The most effective method I've seen is by using a secluded place and giving a sample of what's out there. In Annihilation, it's the shimmer that does this part. For Together, it was a cave where the spring was. For Color Out of Space, it was a farm. Now, these were all isolated places. However, you still get the feeling of something otherworldly or even eldritch in the atmosphere. In Annihilation, once you enter the shimmer, that's it. You will never be the kind of person you were once before you entered it. We get this because once Lena's team crosses the boundary, they forget everything that happened and can only guess that a few days have already passed. That's an immediate shift of the setting. It shows us that something, even as immutable as time, doesn't work the way we understand in that place. This is where it intersects with A Color Out of Space and another movie called The Void. In The Void, we follow a new sheriff just getting into the role that he's been given. It starts with him bringing a junkie into a hospital where his wife is a doctor. We immediately get the sense that there's something that went down between the two and they're trying to work it out. This is when it all devolves into chaos as one of the nurses descends into madness and transforms into something barely human. She's just the first of many as the hospital itself slowly transmogrifies into a gateway to another universe. As the gateway opens wider and wider, the looser the grip of the people in the hospital have on our own reality. While Annihilation frames the otherworldly influence on our plane of existence as beautiful yet terrifying, The Void does away with any kind of pretense of beauty because the transformations undertaken are just plain monstrous. That is, from our perspective anyway. But that also brings us to the theme that almost all cosmic horror stories have. This one is one of the most important in Annihilation. You see, there's nothing more terrifying as having an unanswered question. And when you introduce so many beings, so many situations, and so many peculiarities, you'll have nothing but questions. With cosmic horror stories, a lot of really effective ones leave these questions open. Whether they do it by not answering the question or leaving it up to interpretation, this adds to the mystery of what's out there. In Annihilation, we end the movie with Lena reuniting with Kane. But because of what Lena went through, we know that it wasn't the real Kane, but something else. Something alien. What's more disturbing is that when Kane asked if she was Lena, she didn't answer and her eyes started glowing. Together ended with the couple being fused together, Color Out of Space ended with the family being consumed by the color, whatever that means. Even in The Void, we end with our protagonists becoming trapped in an alternate dimension. These endings all left a lot of questions unanswered. However, it is this very element that gives cosmic horror that impact that it has on its audience. It's the element of ambiguity that leaves a lasting mark on audiences. That's why even after a while of having watched a good cosmic horror story, every so often it comes back to you. Those unanswered questions and deep implications, those are the kinds of itches that you can't quite reach. It terrifies them thinking about what's out there. However, for those who aren't afraid of the implications, I know that it can come as some kind of a comfort knowing that there's something out there bigger than us and that transcends us. For me, I'm undecided. Should I be scared or comforted? However, as a whole, cosmic horror just makes me feel like I'm a speck of dust in the wind and that we're all just dust in the wind. So, what do you think, Lulu?